What exactly is my story? Yeah, that's a good question. Someone asked me that recently. Why don't you do an episode about your story? And I realized that after 3 years of interviewing countless people about their journey, carving their own fucking path, I had never talked about mine. So this episode is about my story. And I had a friend interview me, which was really great. And we had a lot of fun. But I realized after the fact that I kind of missed out on answering the question that most people ask me: how did I end up in Portugal? So if you're really listening carefully, you can hear a slight change in the audio. And that's because I added it in after the fact. The beauty of editing. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. And I really love your feedback. It fires me up. It keeps me going. When I hear that an episode resonated with you, it helped shift your perspective or inspire you, it means the world. Thank you so much for being here. Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willow McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. Okay. Welcome to Carve Your Own Fucking Path podcast. I'm here with a dear friend of mine, Mel Miles, who's actually going to interview me. We're going to turn the tables. She's going to ask me some questions because while I love asking you your story, your path, and how you serve people now, I've never really told my story. And I'm so grateful that you are here with me, and we're going to have some girl talk, and who knows where it's going to go. Thanks for listening.
Well, Willow, I'm honored to do this as a friend, as a podcast host myself, and as someone who's inspired by your story. So is it okay if we just dive right in?
Let's dive. Let's do it.
All right. So you have this beautiful work in the world about encouraging women and men to carve their own fucking path. But let's start with you. Take us back to your life in San Francisco when you were living a very different life. What inspired you to carve your own path?
Thanks for the question. What comes to mind immediately is a moment when I was in a bar and I saw a coaster on the bar and it said, carve your own fucking path. And there was something about it. I had a visceral response that resonated with me really deeply. When I first went to Europe, which was actually in my early 30s, the first day that I arrived, I was in Rome, and I had this overwhelming feeling that I really loved it there, and that one day I was going to move there. I just made the decision in my head that one day I would move to Europe with my husband, my family, and have this beautiful life. Years passed, and I ended a long-term relationship, and then working in this job that I really liked, and then I was suddenly laid off. I found myself in this position of having choices. And I chose to, right after that layoff, I chose to travel for 3 months solo in South America. I had never solo traveled before. I was excited, but also nervous. I didn't know what to expect. I had never stayed in a hostel, and I was in my mid 30s, 36 maybe. Yeah. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that because, I'm too old for that. But I ended up doing that because I was alone and I wanted to meet people. And on that trip, my life changed because I gained a new sense of confidence in that I didn't have to wait for anyone to do what I wanted to do. And that translated into many different areas. So when I came home from that trip, and meanwhile, I'd met all these people and a lot of them had lived in Europe, and we ended up meeting up a year later. When I came home from that trip, I was even more confused about what to do next because my heart was being pulled in different directions, and it was like a battle of the mind and the heart. But I ultimately didn't have this feeling that I needed to wait anymore for anyone to do something. A year later, I went to visit these friends in Barcelona and spent a week there. And while on that trip, I had recently gotten into surfing as well. So I'm from Northern California. It's freezing cold, and it's not the easiest sport in general. But I started surfing with a friend, longboarding, and we just had the best time. So every destination that I went to, I started choosing places where I could surf. So I would want to go to Mexico, and I would book a ticket, and 2 days later I would go. So I really started becoming more spontaneous, but also just taking charge of my life a bit more. And so while on this trip to Spain, I was wanting to spend my last week in Europe surfing and doing yoga and detoxing, let's just say, because Barcelona can be quite extreme. And I ended up in Portugal last minute. I mean, I booked my ticket the next day. I arrived, didn't know anyone, but I went on a recommendation to go to this surf town. This is back in 2016. So at that time, I started messaging friends, world traveler friends, and asking anyone I could, what do you know about Portugal? Should I stay in Lisbon? Is it a dump? What is this place? I had heard that it was good waves and that it was cheap. For some reason, the cheap part, I thought it wouldn't be a very nice place. So I had no expectations. I had never Googled an image of what Lisbon looked like. Portugal was totally a mystery. So when I arrived in Lisbon, first of all, there's a Golden Gate Bridge here, and there is trams, all very much similar to San Francisco. And it turns out it's the sister city. And I was blown away by the similarities to California. And I made my way to this small surf town called Ericeira and booked into this a guest house. And the following week was a series of adventures and connecting to people, especially women, on a different level, because I had felt quite out of place back home in what I had, my interests and a lifestyle that I was wanting to create. So on that trip, made connections, road trip, camp, slept on the beach, under the stars, surf, and felt pretty free. I can't describe it any other way than just this discovery and freedom. And I also was going through this mental kind of struggle around like what's next for me and trying to figure that out, I guess. But I saw people living a certain way that I admired. And I decided to come back 3 months later. At the time I was living in New York, I was doing an apartment swap with a friend. So she was in my place in San Francisco. And I was in New York thinking, okay, career-wise, this is the smartest move. I should move here. It really, because I wasn't landing any jobs in San Francisco in video production. I thought, okay, New York. While I was there, I met with this producer that I actually had met in Lisbon, and we had connected through another friend. And let's just say I met up with him and I told him that, look, I think I should move to New York because that's the right move. I should. But my dream is to live in Europe one day. And he looked at me and he said, if I can give you any advice, if that's your dream, do it now. Don't wait. Don't put it off, because I had a similar dream, but it was to move to LA, and I never did. And now I'm married. I've got kids, and my wife does not want to move to LA. So I'm here. I'm stuck. So if you don't have a lot of ties, do it. And that really was the permission slip I subconsciously was seeking. I went back 3 months later, and on that trip, I had a one-way ticket, and I went back to that small town and spent 6 weeks. It was not planned. It was not structured. It was a seemingly 1 to 2 week trip where I was actually doing some video work. I shot some promotional content for Lisbon, because back then I was a bit of a nobody, but I have a bit of journalism experience and video. And so I made a couple projects. And so they put me up in hotels and I went around, and this would not exist today, obviously, because Lisbon is completely saturated. But back then they were open to people coming and helping them with their promotion of tourism. So I stayed and ended up meeting someone that owned half of this village that I was staying in. And I, on the spot, offered to, he showed me some of his apartments that he had and he was renting on Airbnb. And on the spot, I had the biggest pull, gut feeling that I should make an offer on this apartment to rent for the year. Like, what would he offer? What would he be open to? We shook hands. He's like, great. You can rent it for a year. It's this much. And it was a lot less than what I was paying in San Francisco for a very small, shitty apartment. And I shook hands. I said, okay, great. I'll rent it. And called my mom. And I said, Mom, I'm moving to Portugal. She wasn't surprised, actually, because I'd been traveling a lot. And while it felt really extreme in my head to her and others, it wasn't that big of a shock. So that just showed, I think, how much I was openly seeking something different. And so came home and started making plans to move. And I had there was no information. I didn't know about visas. I didn't know anything. And back then there was no websites. I mean, it was completely, especially for an American, it was not common. And so I found my way back in 3 months. The visa process was about 3 months, packed my life up and went to Iceland with a couple girlfriends before moving to Portugal. And we spent a week in Iceland. And I remember thinking, this is insane. I'm in Iceland. Everything I'm moving with, I have with me right now. And I have to learn how to drive stick because I'd rented a car in Lisbon. I did not know how to drive stick. It's so American of me, but I didn't know how. And so I learned, I was watching YouTube videos and then I also went to Morocco right before. So I went to Morocco, got some home decor to decorate this Airbnb property that I was going to be renting out as my business. Went to Morocco and then landed in Lisbon. Rented the car, and I had envisioned this moment of me driving this car out to Ericeira, and that it was just this moment of complete freedom, and this new chapter was going to begin. And I played this over and over in my head. So when I was experiencing it, and it was raining and I didn't really know how to drive very well, it was a bit more complicated, but I experienced that moment that I had envisioned. And it was surreal. I'm sure you can relate when you envision something and it's happening and you're like, holy shit, this is really happening now. And that was March of 2017. And I've been here ever since. The decision hasn't changed. And I think that that's pretty big because it's easy to run back home or run somewhere else. But I've chosen to be here because I've realized it's really about building a home within and also community. And I've found and created a community that has evolved over these years and shifted and changed. But ultimately, this connection with people that have lived other lives and then chosen this as their home. And I think underneath all of that, we have that in common. And so the connections are deep, they're fast, and sometimes transient and short. And, I think it's become quite a melting pot here of a unique subset of people that have chosen this place as their home and also that are seeking something that connects on a more authentic level. Living in a city like San Francisco and growing up in that area of high achievers, doers, people are living really amazing lives. And I think I compared myself for a long time and that didn't feel good. It never feels good to compare. And this was like pre-Instagram and social media. So now it's like an inundation of all that stuff. But I think there was this inner like misalignment, I guess, in a way of like I was going along, but wanting to do the other direction, but not knowing if it was okay.
And so you're going through this inner transformation, right? That there's a lot of inner work we have to do before we make a decision to change our life.
True. Yeah.
Was there anything was it pain? Was it like what? If you had to look back on your younger self that was in that moment of transformation, like, am I going to take a different path or not? What advice would you give to that girl that was in the midst of that decision making?
Well, I can distinctly remember a moment when I was really struggling. I had been laid off from a job. So that happened. I got laid off. It was a blow to my ego, even though I wanted to leave the job, but just the fact that I didn't have control over that choice. So I was then like propelled into a world where I didn't have a grounding anymore. It didn't have that security, which, I've learned that's not secure anyway. That was 7 years ago, the last job I've ever had. And I remember I was like, a lot of identity was tied up in that. And I would definitely tell her not to tie your identity to anything or anyone, especially a job. And that doesn't define worth. And I put so much of my self-worth in whether or not I had, let's say, a job to fall back on, or a relationship, or something to tie myself to. And when I didn't have those things, I started to listen. And traveling was something that I was drawn to. And I kept doing that because it felt really good. And so when I was doing these things and feeling alive again, a friend of mine, I said, what am I running away from? Because I had a lot of insecurity. What's wrong that I'm wanting to live differently? Because I was taking it as a personal failure. And she said, you're not running away, you're running towards yourself. Mm-hmm. And so that was a definite defining moment of like, wow, yeah, why am I in such conflict? And just letting it unfold and really listening. And so I think from that point, it was a long series of events, a lot of one-way tickets, a lot of spontaneity, a lot of saying yes to things, and also really listening, and that intuitive pull, which I think I had been ignoring for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And walk us through, what were 2 or 3 of the top decisions you made after you left San Francisco that have helped you create the life you've had now, the life you have now?
You're so good at the questions. A couple of decisions. Well, first of all, the permission that ultimately no one is going to give you permission. So I think I kept allowing myself to make decisions without caring what other people thought. And what I learned is that people don't really care. And the things that seem crazy to you, people will say to you, I want to do that. I wish I had the courage to do that. That blew my mind because I really never thought of myself as courageous ever. Mm. And so that's one thing is keep, making decisions that were focused on what I wanted and not pleasing anyone else. I'm sure people would say that I probably don't do many things to please others necessarily, but internally, it was a real struggle. And to keep checking in, I've lived in Lisbon for almost 6 years, or lived in Portugal. And I think it's been this continuous checking in. And what I've also done though, is lived a bit on the, am I in or out? And I've lived kind of both places. I go home a lot and I spend time there and maintain a life there, friends, family. And this is the first year that I've really put, I think, a stake in the ground and decided I'm here and I don't need to be anywhere else. Mm. Because everywhere you go, there you are. One of my favorite quotes, and one of my scariest quotes too, having moved around a lot and changed my external quite often in order to feel something different on the inside. So that's something I learned kind of a long time ago, but it took me a long time to actually implement it. And I think finding that internal place of, okay, I'm fine wherever I go. And yes, I found an amazing place, but it's a choice, a constant choice. It isn't, it's really hard for me to think about long term. And I think that I've just realized as well that it doesn't really matter as long as inside there's some clarity, because otherwise things on the outside will reflect back and be unstable.
Willow, can you give us a glimpse into your life here? I'm your friend, and so I know that this beautiful life you've lived, but on the other side of, leaving friends and family, setting out on this journey to see what it would be like to live in Portugal, you have created a daily rhythm and a life here. Could you let people know what that looks like?
A day in the life. Well, I have to, it's good to reflect on this because I think I hear this sometimes about real life. It's not really real life, or um, like this, that it's different than what you create. And I think that's something that we have to look at, and I do it often and say, this is real life. This isn't just a blip on the radar. This isn't just a vacation mode, although freedom has always been one of my number one values. And that when I realized that, it was like, oh yeah, okay, this makes sense. This makes a lot of sense. This is like the driving force underneath a lot of things. And a day in the life is yoga early in the morning at a beautiful studio, and a couple days a week going to another beautiful space in nature outside of Lisbon. And it's a members club, co-work space, and it feels like home. So I go to a place with incredible people that have become lifelong friends, and we connect, and we also, work out of there, and we all have our own businesses, interests, passions, collaborations, all of these things. And then, we close our laptop, and then we're all together sharing a meal, sunset, swimming in the ocean, doing mushroom ceremonies and cacao ceremonies, being in nature, dinners. And so it's a very social life that we live. And I realized again that like a social network is incredibly important. I don't have children I'm not living with a partner. So I think that, especially as an expat, an immigrant, is like, we're here really seeking those connections and people we can rely on. And it's taken a while to really get to that place. But I think I've found an incredible community that I can be myself, and I feel like people are really there. Which did take a while, because I think as women, independent women, a lot of us have moved by ourselves. And in that, it's like, it takes some time to really find those people that you can call real friends, because there's this instability around, there's a transient nature. And having been here, and I've lived many seasons, you could say, then there's been a lot of people that have come and gone, but ultimately there's this feeling of being rooted and supported. And I feel like there's a lot of growth. And I think that's a lot, because a lot of us have come here on our second go. We've lived lives, we've been married, we've had experiences, and then we're coming here to kind of settle in and be a truer version of ourselves. So I think that's why the community is so strong.
I agree. I think we all are deeply curious about what the authentic version of ourselves is, that we've had this armor, or we've had a season of being the version we thought we needed to be yep. safe and loved in the world, and realize that version didn't really work out. Yeah. So what is the version of Willow you want the world to know? Like, what is the most aligned, true, authentic version of Willow that you find you can express now, and that you want the world to know about?
Damn, it's a good one. Okay, so that's a great question. And there's this, again, this inner struggle, I would say, around showing up online authentically. In real life, I don't think I struggle with that. I always say, I don't hide much. I don't pretend to be anybody. But online, which is something that I help others with, is using my background of video and communications. My own stuff, I think there's a block there, or there's a wall around, what is it? What is this version? And I think that's why we can curate our lives in a certain way. And that's why online is a beautiful place to reach many people, and connect, but also the curation process. And so when people say, because this is a lot of the time when I'm like, when it's reflected back to me, is someone who does follow their heart, carve their own fucking path, and hopefully inspire others to do the same. Because I wish, and I did have some people and people that were far removed, not necessarily close friends, people that were doing this and and turning around and saying, just take the leap. It's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to be better for it. Because the longer that you stay in this inner conflict zone and not taking a step in any direction, you just end up wasting so much time. So I think if anything, it's someone who goes forward and also supports others in doing the same.
Mm-hmm. All right. Can we have some girl talk?
Girl talk. Let's go.
I feel like we have to ask this question that you have carved your own freaking path, right? You're a woman, right? That ended up not like having kids early in life. You chose to prioritize yourself. What is your philosophy on relationships, on singleness and connection, Willow?
This is going to be a long podcast.
Details, because whether you're a man or woman, right? I think a lot of our path is defined by the construct of how we're supposed to like relate romantically with people. And part of carving your own path, and we'll get to work. That's my next question. But I think love and connection is a big one. So how huge. Share.
Oof. I always say I lived life a bit in reverse. You kind of did in a way too. Having had very serious relationships really young and craving, I think that coming from a broken home, I think subconsciously always wanting to create a home with someone. So 19, moving in with my first boyfriend, and then 2 years later in with another one, a couple of years later. And I mean, I was like a serial monogamist and living with them. So taking it up a level, and I didn't have the emotional maturity or, to really be doing those things. So I spent all of my 20s until my mid 30s in a serious relationship. And partially I was ignoring the fully stepping into who I wanted to be, who I was. And I really spend a lot of time hiding behind this person or resting on that person. It's like I see these visuals of kind of in the shadows, and then also using this, person as validation and self-worth and things like that. And so I think when I broke away from that, and it was the scariest thing I've ever done, but also the most liberating. And again, it's like taking that blind leap, So I think relationships have played such a big role in defining moments like throughout my life. And so I've not had many relationships since I've been here. And I moved in my late 30s. And so I think I had a vision for what I wanted to happen, and it didn't work out the way I envisioned, but I was also making different choices. You don't move to a tiny town in the middle of nowhere wanting to find your life partner. I mean, that might happen, but the focus was elsewhere. And so I think it was several years of experiencing myself just on my own, which is always a good thing, as lonely as it can feel, or a struggle and all those kind of negatives. I think being single has literally been some of the best years of my life, for sure. Underneath all that, there is a deep craving for that partnership, and realizing also that the growth really can come in relationship rather than having to be on your own all the time. And while there's value in that, I also think being in partnership is it's the mirror. And I've had my mirror held up recently, and it ain't pretty. sometimes because I used to hear this, like being single is easier. It's easier. I'm like, no way. So much harder to be alone. And, and now I can definitely verify it is easier to be single because that mirror isn't held up as much. And now I'm forgetting the exact question, but I ultimately think that the choices that I've made have made it harder in a way. And also I have to take responsibility for all of that. But with relationships, I also feel like, we attract where we are and a bit of who we are. So all of those things, I can't keep blaming and say, I moved here, I messed up my life, because that's sometimes my inner dialogue. Like, what the fuck did I do? I just completely threw these opportunities away, and I went this other direction. But at the same time, I think it's been showing like you need to really look at what are these patterns, because I'm, always the common denominator in all these scenarios.
Yeah. I mean, we're in the relationship with ourselves first and foremost, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And we bring whatever it is, our wounds or behaviors into any relationship. Well, thank you for sharing and being vulnerable, because I know that's a value of yours, and to share with the world is great.
Thank you for the question. Yeah.
So let's switch to carving your own fucking path in your career. So you spend a lot of time promoting other people's voices and brands, but especially as you look ahead to the new year, how are you carving your own path in work?
Well, I think there's some things to be looked at deeper, because ultimately I wanted to find a way that I could stay in Lisbon and work here and also use a skill set that I've had. And so having an online business is still really new. And I've learned a lot. I've failed a lot, tried this and tried that. And I don't feel like I've gotten there. It's definitely still a major evolution. And I'm really grateful that we live in a time that we can work from anywhere, and that I can have connections and tap into a network that I've had for a long time, that I didn't know the value until you need it. That's another thing, is for people to realize like having a network and is your biggest asset. And I really love helping people show up on camera. I've really enjoyed that aspect of things, because I know how scary it can be, and also how powerful it can be when you actually get your message across. And hiding doesn't do anyone any good. And when I see that, and I'm working with clients in that way, I see myself sometimes. And recently that's come up for me, where I feel like I've been hiding a little bit and amplifying other voices, which I will always do. But there's power in sharing, again, your own story, and also stepping into the light, not ego wise, but also because there's a deeper calling there. And so I'm really listening to that more and going, kind of just taking it a level deeper, because I've now proven to myself I can create a business. It can be a business, while it can be much bigger, better, all the things. There's something in that sometimes I don't really acknowledge it. And recently I realized it's been 7 years since I've had a job. That's pretty crazy. I remember how scary that was. Like, what the fuck am I going to do? And freaking out. And then eventually things work out in a way, because looking at values, like if freedom's been my number one, and I have not been free for that long, until it was a much more conscious decision. And so I think believing that it's possible, because for a long time I didn't believe it was possible. And so now it's just like, take that one step and then the next one. And sometimes I find goal setting a bit useless for me, because if the goal seems so big, it is a gradual, it's a process. So I think ultimately going deeper and really showing up more authentically and with a purpose. and that purpose getting more clear as time goes on.
Love it. So can we look forward to anything in 2023 from you? Is there anything you want to share, or still secret?
I mean, not many secrets, but I think if anything, it's an offering, a different offering, and also putting myself out there a bit more, because like podcasting has been definitely an amazing, like really fun side project. So I think even going further with that, going deeper on topics myself, and so kind of building out that, and being on camera more, I think, really ultimately, because I really, really enjoy it. So something fun, potentially in Lisbon, doing things like that more in person, and I'm doing much more in person. That's really, I think, the change in 2023. And I'm so grateful for the remote business. I mean, life-changing completely. And I also really miss and want more of this personal interaction and collaboration and things like that. So really grateful for that, because this community is pretty incredible. And I think I haven't looked at it as, for some reason, again, limiting beliefs, keeping me believing that I didn't really have much here, that everything was online or over there. It's like, it's more about focusing in and actually being much more present.
I love that. So the audience has sent in some questions, and there's some good, juicy ones in here. So we are going to ask some questions from the audience. The first one being, if you could go back in time and say one thing to your younger self, what would it be?
How young? Okay, so I would say a lot of things. And it actually contradicts itself a bit, because I would say, don't take yourself so seriously. But then I would say, take yourself more serious. I would say both those things. Yeah.
It's a good one. How about, and you've talked about this a little bit, but perhaps maybe in your personal life, you want to share something. What's the biggest hurdle you've had in the pursuit of your passion in this life?
Biggest hurdle is myself, I would say. The inner dialogue, and second guessing, doubting, not believing, all of that. Biggest hurdle. And I see it so clearly in others. I think this is why I can see how we are our own biggest hurdle in so many things. And I think that would be the biggest one, is actually not thinking I need XYZ. I think support is incredibly valuable and necessary, but ultimately knowing that I have the capabilities, the power to do and create exactly what I want to.
Good answer. Yeah, I agree that oftentimes, we're our own biggest barrier.
Yeah.
The trauma and the pain that we've experienced in our life kind of keeps us stuck.
Definitely.
All right. This is a question from Fran asking, I love this one, because we talk a lot about play, and I'm obviously biased on this. I believe in the healing power of play and rest and pleasure. And oftentimes it's our inner child, right? The version of us before we met all the expectations of the world that just wanted certain things. But Fran asked, what would your inner child tell you now?
Don't ever grow up. It doesn't look like you are anytime soon. So keep going. Going back to that serious thing, because I think the lightness and the playfulness is so important. And there's really nothing better than those belly laughs with your friends. And the world just makes sense in those moments.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, one of your friends asked, how do you make the same flamingo pose and not fall? Tell us, Willow, how does one make a flamingo pose and not fall?
I'm trying to think, what is that? Like one
leg.
That's a tough one.
Yoga training. Another member of the audience asked, what is your best dance move?
Oh, I would say the best one is the one you don't really give a shit about if anyone's watching, which is how I dance anyway. That's always been an area where I feel free. Grateful for that, because it's definitely the best feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's not giving a fuck.
What is the time recently when you didn't give a fuck? And just maybe disappointed. What is the time where you disappointed someone because you didn't give a fuck and you chose yourself?
Really recent. I would say in relationships, like doing something because it felt good, knowing that there would be a consequence or a potential, it would affect someone else negatively. And I think sometimes it can be confused for, or like selfishness, which I've learned is actually a positive, is knowing when to be selfish. And also being able to identify this is potentially hurtful to someone else. And so why that 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 24 hours of pleasure or fun, whatever, you want to say it is, like it does have its potential consequences. And so I think that's something that ultimately doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. For anyone involved. So there's the carefree, the not caring, and then there's the other side where it's, more harmful.
What inner dialogue do you use when you find yourself wanting to please people or perhaps fit in, or there's this like nice girl, Willow? What is the inner dialogue you use to reconnect to your authentic self? And perhaps it's maybe not the nice girl Willow, right? The Willow that's willing to honor herself and her needs and desires. Mm-hmm. Walk us through maybe some of the tools you have, or just how you talk to that girl when she's faced with a situation where maybe she feels obligated to please someone else, but she knows deep down that she needs to choose herself.
It is like checking in. And I've had to come up, like this has been a theme lately, because I am a yes person. Friends that they love that about me. And I think it's just me. I'm open, I'm flexible. And I've really started to notice how saying no is the most powerful thing, because in that there is this potential for letting others down. But on the other side, it allows for that space, for the silence, the quiet. And I live alone. For example, I've lived alone a long time. And sometimes I think I get so much alone time. I'm alone all the time. And it's not really true. I think I give a lot of energy to others. I get energy from others, extrovert. So I think that's something that I've noticed. But I think recently it's been really checking in, like, does this matter? Do I need to do this? And also thinking ahead. And I see myself the next day, the next morning, the next thing, and I see the trickle down effect. I used to really live in the moment. I miss those days. I miss that version of me. But ultimately, when I do think ahead, that's when I know I'm taking care of myself. And I don't get FOMO that much anymore. I used to get it a lot. I mean, I'm like way back, teenage years. I was like, I always had to be in the mix and all those things. But ultimately now I'm like, nope, it just doesn't matter. I matter. So I think that's been a big reflection of where I'm at. And also there's so much stimulus around here. There's so many things going on. And I think we live in a unique place with so much options and having a community that is like a family. And so that's There's always something to do. And I think that's been something I'm realizing is if it's not lifting me up or, again, being with a close friend, drinking tea, having a conversation, that to me is the most rewarding and I would say, uplifting thing that I could do. Like it's a gift, rather than staying out all night, which that can be fun sometimes too. But maybe I'm finally growing up a little bit.
But we have a good rhythm. I mean,
Willow
can come over to my house, but she knows I put my pajamas on at a certain time and she'll be watching me brush my teeth. But that's so wonderful to have friendships that can be natural and organic. We don't have to do things fancy. It can just be a night in. But speaking of, so some of your audience that are sending in questions don't live in Portugal. So I'm interviewing you. I obviously know about this country and this community, but for people that love you and your audience from back in the US, can you just give them a glimpse into what is living in Portugal like?
It is, for all my Californian friends, it is the California of Europe. It has the sun, the beach, the laid backness, much more laid back than California as a culture, which I really love that. Going back to not taking yourself so serious. I really love being in a country where there isn't a lot of seriousness. There's a long history, there's a heavy history, but ultimately a culture that lives life day by day. They take things as it comes. And it's really amplified my impatience and frustrations with things not going smoothly, with inefficiencies, and also just not thinking outside the box. I realize as an American, we think about solutions, we take action, and it's customers always right, those things. There's also this entitlement that comes with that. So here, you have to I've had to let some of those things go and adjust. And I think that's, if anything, a great experience for anyone thinking that the rest of the world operates on this rhythm. It has a lot of authenticity. And that's what Europe has always meant to me, was this rich, authentic, quaint, deep, history of, a past that goes back thousands of years. And I think being able to live here and experience that on a daily basis, there's something very grounding about it and beautiful. Again, such an international community. So we'll be sitting at dinner and there's 10 countries, people from 10 different places. And I love that. And no day is the same. I think living abroad has quieted this inner wanderlust, this zest for I need to be here and there. And I think I'll always love travel, but I haven't traveled in years. Honestly, I go back to California and that's it, because it's such a challenge being in a new place all the time, language, culture, differences, everything. So I think if anything, I feel much more alive. I walk out my door and I feel like I'm alive. Mm-hmm. And that's what this place represents. When I fly back here, I have this giddiness. I have butterflies in my stomach. And this is going on 6 years of this feeling. And I'm like, holy shit, this is home. This isn't vacation. This is home. And I hope that feeling never goes away. But I think part of it is living more in alignment, finding a place. It doesn't need to be a different country. It doesn't need to be a different town, but it's really honoring what feels good to you.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think so many people that are immigrants that live in Portugal came here for an alignment of values. And I'm here because of the freedom, because of the slower pace of life. But it does, I think, we are the product of our environment to some extent, and the environment around us has been such a gift in slowing down and connecting to ourselves and sharing life with people that also value similar things.
Exactly. It's a melting pot of that. So it's a unique subset of people, I think,
Mm-hmm. Well, Willow, last question. What is one, before we play a little game, what is one secret or something people don't know about you?
Oh, I asked this last night, actually, when we did
share.
We were doing a group and I was like, oh, I'm going to ask a good question. And I thought I would never want to answer this myself. And of course,
back to you.
Mel asked me that. What is this? That someone doesn't know about me?
Yeah, or a secret that you're willing to share.
I don't know if it's a secret. It's not necessarily, but I think the outward life that I've represented or shown or something is that just free, no responsibilities, that kind of thing. But ultimately, I want a very simple life. And that's what I'm craving the most, I think, is the partnership. And I would love to have one kid. Adopt, totally fine with that. But really, I want to experience that. And I've not openly admitted that because I'm scared that it won't happen.
Thanks for sharing. Yeah, sometimes saying what we want out loud is the bravest thing.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be one of them. But again, I don't hide much. And I'm grateful to have people to share these things with in a way. So I always say I'm an open book, but I think declaring more of actually what I want, which is what a lot of people want, and they do, and they get it and they have it. But I think I've not fully listened or fully expressed that because of fear. Yeah.
Are there any other desires you have maybe for 2023 that you're holding in your body?
I'm going to buy an apartment next year.
Yes,
that is happening. That's been a big thing because it represents a lot more than four walls and a roof. It's home. And that is what I've been seeking for a long time. Home within myself, which again, that's also been a big learning. And also a home, a base, roots. And it doesn't mean that my freedom is taken away. If anything, it's like wings can be spread even wider because of this home base. And so it represents a lot. I've realized that, like, I've been talking about this a long time, but it has a much deeper meaning than what I originally thought it meant.
That's beautiful. Thank you, sister. All right, we're going to play a game. So I have a number of words for you, and I want you to share just what comes to mind. So I'm going to say a word, and you need to say a word back. So stream of consciousness needs to be quick. Don't overthink it.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, ready.
Escape.
Island.
Home.
Peace.
Unknown.
Life.
Never.
Ending.
So good. Always.
And forever. Sorry, I'm just thinking of cheesy statements.
Pain.
I feel that one. Inevitable.
Pleasure.
Abundance.
Loss.
A necessity.
Success.
Happiness.
Tunnel.
Pathway. Like, yeah. Tunnel vision.
Surrender.
The ultimate.
That's 2 words, but
damn it. Ultimate.
Love.
Joy.
Contagious.
Laughter.
Gift.
Friendship.
Tomorrow.
Beautiful.
Forgive.
Gift.
Goodbye.
Transformation.
Limits.
Safety.
An ending.
Beginning.
There we go. Ladies and gentlemen, the mind of Willow. Carving your own fucking path.
Oh my God.
So, Willow, that was a fun game. But is there anything else in your heart,
fun.
sister? Because I appreciate your vulnerability. And I know the people that always see you interviewing others, I really felt like you spoke from your heart and were vulnerable in your shares. So I want to just give you this platform that there's no objective, but I know like your audience is going to love to see like you and the energy and the story behind you. So is there anything else in your heart to share?
I'm just honestly, this being able to be in this space with you and be able to share that is the greatest gift that I feel, and that's when I said like friendship, it's a gift. And more the value of friendship is so huge.
And I think I'll just reflect on our community and our friendship that I lived in the West Coast of the US as well. I think the concept of friendship, when you have a busy job, it was like a dinner once a week or maybe like once a month you would see your friends. And it always just felt hard to fit in. And I valued friendship, but there was like limits to time and had my routine. And I think one thing that the city has given us is both proximity. We all live very close, as well as a sense of, because we all value freedom, that there's, people like show up at each other's doors or just like hang out at each other's house, and a sense of like weaving, that there's not as much like plan and structure, but there's just like a deep commitment to be in each other's lives. And I think a single friendship is a beautiful bond, but then when you like build that out to have like 6 or 8 different people that can weave it and like really support each other. And like you said, when we co-work at the same place, it's a place where you can go hiking, you can drink, right? Like we live all within a kilometer or 2 of each other. I just, and you're a part of building that, right? Like, I think we all can say we value friendship, but I just really want to acknowledge your ability to show up, your ability to like welcome people, to invite people in. Like there's a gift that you also have chosen the type of friendship you wanted and are willing to go deep. And so you're going deep with your audience now, but you've also gone deep with your community. And that has led to so many cabin weekends and belly laughs and adventures in the forest and things that I'm experiencing in friendship for the first time, because all of us are willing to invest the time and say yes to each other. And so I know you're also building a beautiful business and juggling a lot of things, but you've said yes to community and it's impacted the city. So I just want to reflect that back to you as another mirror, that we all can say we value something, but I think part of carving your own fucking path is also being deeply committed to the things we want. And your commitment to connection and friendship has resulted in so much beauty.
Thanks, Mel.
That's my monologue about friendship.
That was beautiful. And I will reflect it back to you, you've been here 1 year and you've created so much tangible connections for others. Mel facilitates weekly dinners in her home, going deep on certain questions and bringing people together on a much deeper level from all walks of life. And then now has created a club bridging the gap between Portuguese and foreigners, because there is a big gap here. And that's something that a lot of people don't talk about. And you've been active in like facilitating so much connection and growth.
I always say that my life in the US was very polarized in the sense I did spend a lot of time with people who were similar economic levels or job backgrounds or like me. And when you become an expat in a city, there's also this diversity, which is beautiful. And I think the quality of our lives is defined by the quality of our relationships. And when you have diverse relationships, it's where the inspiration, it's where the ideas come from. But like what Willow was talking about, bridging the gap between any culture or people or ideas takes a a humility and an openness. And I think we all want that, but whether it's a romantic relationship or building a community, like there's differences that are very real that take time to like really merge and integrate.
Right. And it's happening.
Anyway, so we're gonna go out and have a party as we do most every night.
Pretty much.
Because Willow and I love being social.
Yes.
But you can follow along on her Instagram. I'm sure there's many beautiful episodes on this podcast, but let's just celebrate Willow for telling her own story and the heart and soul behind.
Thank you.
And you always, I believe you always have to do something yourself before you have to be the teacher. So we saw today that Willow is the real deal in terms of having carved her own path. And yes, you're teaching people how to be in front of the camera, but you also have so much wisdom about how to be a human and live your life on your own terms.
Work in progress.
All right. Well, I'm going to hand this MC role back up to you.
You're so good. Thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And also for those who asked questions, and it means the world that you even listened to this. And I'm grateful for you being here, because if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be sharing my story. So thank you for joining this episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path. I love you. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.